Cyrus, Janssen, you spent a lot of time in China, with America seemingly prepared to damage and fracture relations with even close neighbors like Canada and so on. That there's an opportunity here for China to exploit this.
This is very ironic. Right now, China is celebrating the 80-year victory over fascism, and Donald Trump right now very much is acting like a fascist dictator in how he is ruling the United States of America.
But you know China well. What do you think China's actual aspiration is for the world?
Everyone, earlier this week I had the pleasure of joining Piers Morgan, one of the UK's most prominent political commentators, on his show to discuss the recent meeting of India's Prime Minister Modi with China's Xi Jinping in Beijing. This meeting was monumental, as it marked the first time in 7 years that India's Prime Minister personally traveled to China. And the main reason for this move was Donald Trump's decision to pass a 55% tariff, one of the highest in the world, against India, a country that was supposed to be the United States' closest ally in Asia. This was my second appearance on the Piers Morgan show, and I was also joined by several other panelists, including Ms. Barkha Dutt, one of India's most prominent journalists, who has nearly 7 million followers on Twitter. The world is shifting faster than anyone can imagine, so please enjoy today's important conversation.
China's vast military parade today was officially held to mark 80 years since the country defeated Japan in the Second World War. But really, it was about sending a message. And the message was not very subtle. This is the first time that China's Xi Jinping, North Korea's Kim Jong-un, and Russia's Vladimir Putin have ever appeared together. And the world's premier dictators watched a staggering display of military heft, including nuclear ballistic missiles, laser weapons, giant underwater drones, and robot wolves. In all honesty, it was probably a bit closer to what President Trump imagined for his own parade in Washington, D.C. earlier this year. And the US president, who was deliberately not invited, well, sounded a bit jilted. Please give my warmest regards to Putin and Kim Jong-un, he wrote to the Chinese leader, as you conspire against the United States of America. Well, conspiring or not, the so-called anti-NATO alliance wants the Western world to know that it means business. India's Modi has also been glad-handing in Beijing this week, which many believe was another sign that Trump's trade war and his new bromance with NATO had brought the world's other big powers together. There's excitable talk about a new Cold War, a new axis of evil, and the demise of American supremacy. But there's a counter-argument too, one that says America's power should end at its borders, and that the people who talk about axis of evil have delivered nothing more than debt and war. So is Xi Jinping the new sheriff of the world police? And if so, how afraid should we be? Cyrus, Janssen, you spent a lot of time in China. You're pretty pro-Chinese. Are they looking at what's happening in the United States with what many perceive to be a pretty chaotic strategy with tariffs and so on? Are they looking at this as an opportunity that, with America seemingly prepared to damage and fracture relations with even close neighbors like Canada and so on, that there's an opportunity here for China to exploit this?
Piers, you're spot on. I think the sentiment in China right now is that there's a great opportunity. I mean, there's actually a saying for Trump. He has a nickname in China, which is Jianguo, which literally means to build the country. So the Chinese people really feel that Donald Trump, through his tariffs and through his actions as president, I mean, this is very ironic. Right now, China is celebrating the 80-year victory over fascism, and Donald Trump right now very much is acting like a fascist dictator in how he is ruling the United States of America. He is compromising many of the fundamentals of our Constitution and doing many things that are simply go against what we stand for in the United States, or what we're supposed to stand for. And I think that China simply sees an opportunity. And this is what, if you talk to people in China, they see that, Chinese people are always willing to open up, to do business. I mean, American businesses have been thriving in China for many, many decades. There's always an opportunity. We talk about Africa. I mean, if you look at Africa, 53 of 54 nations in Africa have pledged their allegiance to China in an earlier summit that was held by Xi Jinping earlier this year. Generally speaking, I mean, you can look at Western surveys, over 300 surveys, they actually point to the fact that China is indeed actually very popular amongst the people in Africa because they bring real tangible benefits to the continent, not this colonial past that the United States and European allies do. So honestly, I mean, Donald Trump is very popular in China, but he's popular for the reason that Chinese people feel that China's getting stronger with this. We look at, for example, the sanctions against the tech industry. This has caused China to become faster, to become better. You put China in a corner, they're not going to give up. They're going to invent their way out of this situation. Then this is even was said by Donald Trump. He said, look, we cannot tariff the semiconductor industry anymore because it will only motivate the Chinese to get better at what they're doing. And this is exactly exactly why Donald Trump has this nickname of the country builder. And yes, I would say Chinese people are very optimistic about the future. And again, Donald Trump, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, Piers. Look at what he has done to our traditional allies. I'm also half Canadian. My wife is from Vancouver, Canada. It is amazing how he has destroyed the most important geopolitical relationship for the United States, and that's our closest ally, Canada.
But has he? I mean, look, let's play devil's advocate here. I mean,
Sure.
Has he destroyed them, or is he doing what Donald Trump often likes to do, which is chucking things up in the air and seeing what sticks? He's launched a global tariff war, and quite a few countries, including my own, the United Kingdom, have rolled over pretty quickly and are now paying a lot more than they were before Trump came into power for his second term. So there is a method to the apparent madness. He believes that tariffs can be used as a very effective bartering tool, and a lot of countries are prepared to go along with it. The issue I think that he may have here is the India part of this. It's the presence of the Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, because that follows Donald Trump and obviously the trade war, the 55% tariff on India, which surprised many people who thought, well, hang on, America was getting on well with India and appeared to be parking that relationship well away from Russia, China, North Korea. Now suddenly, through this economic attack, if you like, on India, it seems to have driven India into the bosom of this new world order. How do you see it from India's perspective?
Piers, I would agree that the unipolar moment is over, but I think Donald Trump has not got the memo. He is still behaving like he's the feudal warlord of the world, that he can wag his fingers at other sovereign nations, tell them to sit up, stand up, do push-ups, there's a good boy, and if they don't, they will be punished. From the Indian perspective, Trump's decision to impose a penalty of an additional 25% on India for its purchase of Russian oil is basically seen by Indians as an affront to our sovereignty. India's ambassador to Moscow has made it clear that we as a country will buy oil where we get the best deal. To top it all, America's staggering hypocrisy is on full display. Let me just share a couple of data points with you. The Americans, and I don't know how many American people know this, America continues to import fertilizers, palladium, uranium from Russia. Between January and May, the import of palladium and uranium respectively has gone up by 37% and 28%. The European Union is buying refined oil from India, that it's, India is purchasing crude from Russia, refining it, and the European Union is buying it up to $15 billion worth of oil imports. And guess what? Alongside all of this, India was also the largest supply of diesel to guess which country? Ukraine in July. I think what India is trying to say to Trump with those images in China is, Donald Trump, India has options, and you're not our schoolyard bully anymore. Or never were.
Cyrus, let me come to you. At the core of this, you've got the two superpowers. You've got the United States of America, you've got China. They are both huge superpowers. Historically, America has been number one. It's very arguable now that that is still the case. We may not know the full extent of China's power, but you know China well. What do you think China's actual aspiration is for the world?
It's a great question, Piers, and I think it's very simple when you look at how China has transformed over the last 40 years. I mean, let's not forget that over 800 million people in China have been lifted out of poverty into the middle class. I think when you go to China and you spend time there, Piers, you know this firsthand. You made an amazing documentary of your time in Shanghai.
On that point, Cyrus, I went to Shanghai for 3 weeks and I was amazed. It was nothing. In a way, I hadn't been as amazed until I went to Riyadh and discovered how different that was to the preconceived perception I've been led to believe it was like. But yeah, I was stunned by China, actually. Well, let me put it this way. I was stunned by what I found in Shanghai.
But what's interesting, you went to Shanghai, which is the most cosmopolitan, most advanced modern society, in China, the biggest city. But go to the 5th tier, 6th tier cities, go to villages that have been transformed over the last 20 years. You'll be able to see continuous tremendous progress throughout all of China, from the big cities down to the small cities. Piers, there was a 10-year Harvard Business Review where they actually polled Chinese citizens and actually wanted to see the level of support for the government. But when you go down to these rural areas, these villages, this is where you find the biggest amount of support for China's government because they see the tangible results. I think that to answer the key point of your question is, what is China's vision for the world? What does China want to achieve? The first thing is they have to take care of 1.4 billion people. Right along with India, China has one of the most populous nations in the world. It has a tremendous amount of responsibility. Yes, there's economic downturn right now, real estate crisis. I mean, it's not all, roses over there in China, but they're learning to deal with that. They're adapting, they're changing strategies. Again, they're moving forward renewable energy, things that are completely transforming the future of our entire world. When you look at the Global South, and this is why the BRICS organization and the Global South is thriving right now, and why there's so much momentum in this movement, because a lot of people around the world, and again, you have to remove yourself from this Western media bubble and people that want to fearmonger about China and preach to you that, China hates America. China wants to take down America. That couldn't be further from the truth. Chinese people, when you go there and connect with them, they want to do business with America. Chinese has always been welcome to American business. And the simple fact is that I think China wants to have a multipolar world. They're never going to say, hey, we don't want you to work with America. We don't want you to work with the United States. In reality, China has been very appreciative of America. They've been recognizing, hey, look, you're a superpower, we're a superpower. Why don't we, if you're a developing country in Africa, why don't you do business with both of us? We're not saying that you should only do business with China, but unfortunately, that is not the same case for the United States, which we continually go to Africa and we don't provide any investment. We don't provide any tangible benefits. We simply say, you should not be doing business with China because they're not a democracy like we are. But yet, look at the state of democracy in the United States. Vast majority of Americans would not agree that we are a democracy right now. So again, it's looking into that mirror and looking at how we can improve ourselves. This is what China is doing. They're looking at how can they improve, how can they advance, and how can they take care of their society. The stark contrast between the two is you have a government that is looking forward, taking care of their society. There's been so many wars, so many conflicts, so many trillions of US dollars that has been wasted for the American public. This is the biggest problem. And so, and again, what I see right now is a big problem. I'm a US citizen. I'm a proud American. I love my country, but I see us being isolated on the world stage because of the actions of Donald Trump. And I've never seen America's reputation amongst the world at the lowest point it is right now. Piers, you're a European. You understand this. Go to Europe. What is Americans' perception in Europe right now? Go to Canada. Go to Asia.
I want to leave the last word to Barkha as the lady of the panel. And it's this. It's would you rather be mates with America or China?
Look, I think India was leaning towards the United States of America quite clearly without being an ally. And that would be where the natural affinity would have lain because of a shared sort of set of democratic values, but also because globalization equals westernization for large sections of the Indian elite or middle class. I myself studied and grew up in New York. So, and there are many, many sort of people like me. But that said, Piers, despite my skepticism about China, despite my natural affinity with America as a nation state, I think my sense of pride and self-respect as an Indian is offended by any country and any leader assuming that it has the right to tell me and my country what to do, how to conduct ourselves, and so on. And I think what Americans are not getting about the Indian response is this. For us, this is not about tariffs and trade, and you can have a whole argument about this. For us, this is about sovereignty. We are still emerging from our history with the British. We're still emerging from our history with the empire. We're a new nation that had to fight for our autonomy, our independence. And I think for India, it is about that. I just want to make one quick last point. I don't know, we didn't mention that the Americans are actually taking a 10% markup on weapons that they're now selling to Europe that are then being sent to Kyiv. So for Trump, everything is about business. So let's not pretend that this has a lot to do with morality and ideology. Point one. Point two, unless Trump can cut a deal with the Chinese, and it's possible, anything is possible, the old American calculation that India was somehow going to be the countervailing force to the rise of China in the Indo-Pacific, Trump has challenged and upended American calculations there. Forget what we're thinking. And somebody's got to think about whether that's smart.
Everyone, I wanted to end today's video with Miss Barkha Dutt's final message because I feel it's so powerful and relative to the global shift we see happening around the world today. Remember her words. India was leaning towards the United States because of a shared set of democratic values. But Trump's attack against India's sovereignty was a red line that the US president should have never crossed. I brought that point up earlier when I explained to Piers how Canadians have turned against the United States. Piers, of course, didn't believe me, but many of my long-term viewers know I lived in Canada for many years. I'm a dual US and Canadian citizen and know the facts of the situation. This meeting in Beijing will go down as one of the most important events in our new multipolar world. And if the US government was smart, it would reflect on the changes that are rapidly happening and learn that bullying and attacking others will never work as an effective foreign policy. Everyone, thank you for making it to this point of the video, and stay tuned as our next video will be a deep dive analysis of Modi's visit to Beijing and why 26 world leaders all traveled to Beijing to attend China's military parade. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, drop us a comment down below to let us know what you thought of today's important episode, and I can't thank you all enough for your amazing support. We look forward to seeing you all in our next video soon.